Durin, a venomous dragon of utterly fearsome proportions. Dragonspine, a cold, inhospitable mountain where snow never melts. One who lived through the nightmare of Durin's attack on Mondstadt might call the mountain that is now Durin's grave a fitting place for such a despicable creature. And they would be right. Indeed, they would be more right than they know. Except maybe for the despicable creature part. This is the story of Durin and Dragonspine, a story of a mountain once teeming with pure and beautiful life, and of a dragon that may have once been the same.
Perhaps Durin's power drives people to madness, but that's merely crude conjecture.
To set the stage for themes and tie-ins later on, I believe it important to start at the very beginning. Dragonspine wasn't always a cold, melancholic mountain plagued by unrelenting snow. On the contrary, long ago, it was settled by a group of people who sought a warmer and more hospitable climate, one far from snow and strife. At the time, this mountain was exactly that. They named it Vindagnyr, and built upon and within it a civilization that would flourish and come to be known as Sol Vindagnyr. As their efforts began to bear fruit, as their culture developed, the gods of Celestia looked upon them in favor and bestowed an unknown gift, presumably some form of knowledge. In time, a princess was born with clairvoyance. And as we all know, prophets in a fantasy setting cannot escape one inevitability, being terrorized by an omen of their completely unpreventable doom. The omen came in the form of a dream of Durin, and while something terrible did ultimately happen, it would turn out that she perhaps misunderstood the dream. Prophets often lack context. This impending doom would be Skyfrost's nail falling from the sky. We put that term, falling, in air quotes because it's almost certain it was a deliberate act from Celestia. Though the details as to why are vague, hints that the people began to question the power of the gods are present. Given what we currently know of Conria's fate, which followed sometime after the events of Vindagnyr, we'll presume it a deliberate act. Skyfrost's nail is found entombed in ice at the mountain's peak, sitting in something of a crater. We don't know if it struck the mountain, but if it did, the results, well, those that weren't killed outright no doubt struggled to regain their bearings from an impact that shook the mountain to its very core. The first of many catalysts that reduced wonderful structures to the rubble and ruin we see dotting the landscape today. For the people of Sol Vindagnyr, it was nothing short of the Cataclysm. The survivors turned their gazes to Celestia, bewildered as to why the gods had forsaken them. Were their actions, their curiosity in uncovering the secrets of knowledge new to them, so deplorable? But forsaken was putting it lightly. This was extermination. Shards from Skyfrost's nail would go on to have disastrous effects on the landscape, such as killing the ley line of the area, the Irminsul tree, and with each place we find a piece having played a significant role in the people who called themselves Sol Vindagnyr. A relentless snowstorm enveloped the mountain, entombing the people and cutting them off from the rest of the world. Thus, Vindagnyr became the cold, melancholic mountain it is today. There are, of course, more details to this story that can be dug up from the remnants of this civilization, but this is enough to set the stage for our star and his significance to the mountain. And so, it's time for Durin to make an entrance.
As a vile dragon approached Mondstadt in Wednesday. Over the cathedral loomed Death and his friends.
The game introduces Durin in the opening act as a vile, venomous dragon. However, much like Dragonspine wasn't always blanketed in snow, Durin may not have always been this way. It's a notion that, honestly, sounds incredibly credible, and is the gilded ribbon courtesy of Auttumn Art's comment on the previous Truth of Albedo video that neatly ties together everything beyond this point. How? Well, Durin was literally fed the personification of human impurity in the form of the first Albedo created in the primordial human project. As Auttumn Art posits, this slowly corrupted Durin from within. Examples that back this theory of Durin's original form are aplenty, so let's take a look, starting with Durin's arrival in Mondstadt. Venti's ballad recounts the tale from the perspective of the city. One day, a terrifying skeletal dragon moseys on into town, and Dvalin is summoned in defense. But let's not forget that every story has many sides. From the description of the Festering Desire, a sword granted after completion of the Chalk Prince and the Dragon, we see that Durin's thoughts were pure in his approach to Mondstadt. In contradiction to the actions, he may not have been able to fully control. And remember that word, contradiction. It's a recurring theme with Durin. The sword itself, the Festering Desire, is our next contradiction. A fitting symbol for the corrupted dragon, its introduction in the event trailer cleverly depicts it as a rod of Asclepius, with a sword in place of the rod. Normally a universal symbol of healing and resurrection, this sword of Asclepius, crafted from parts of Durin's body, may well symbolize the same, but not without scarring the life its power touches, in much the same way a sword is used to protect by maiming. After all, Durin's blood brought the immensal tree of Vindagnyr back to life, but twisted its appearance along with the rest of the mountain.
For example, awakening life, breathing new life into fallen leaves.
And what of Vindagnyr, or Gold, an alchemist seeking to create perfect life? She created both Durin and Albedo with a form of alchemy known as the art of chemia.
It hails from Canrea, the art of chemia. Soil and chalk, the universe and earth, pure dust and the birth of human life.
The first Albedo, as we mentioned, is full of impurities. This could be because he's a failed attempt, or because he's literally the impurities separated from the Albedo we know during the second stage of alchemy, known as the Albedo, a stage in which the sole focus is removing impurities. For more on that, feel free to check out my aforementioned Truth of Albedo video that covers the stages of alchemy and their connections to Albedo and his quest series. Whichever the case, Vindagnyr is unhappy with this impure Albedo and orders Durin to eat him. Perhaps she assumed Durin's overwhelmingly pure life force would either purify or dispose of him. She considers Durin one of her greatest achievements, and one has to think that she wouldn't have intentionally poisoned the dragon, or created the dragon in that terrifying likeness outright, given how much she detests the impurities of the first Albedo. Auttumn Art and I are on the same page with this line of thought. And really, it seems entirely— oh, wait, she created the Rift Hounds. Right, well, let's assume all this Durin stuff happened before she lost her mind and created a pack of vicious, dimension-hopping wolves. With these impurities now festering inside of Durin, his slow transformation begins. His flesh rots, giving way to his skeletal appearance, and his power is synonymous with the art of chemia, meant to heal and bring life, are corrupted, twisted into something sinister. Dvalin is an example of this change happening. A dragon birthed from the heavens that would eventually slay Durin and be cast into slumber for centuries upon exposure to Durin's blood of venom. Centuries in which the impurities would fester within his body. Not enough to transform his appearance, this would be trace amounts compared to the source of impurities that Durin devoured, but enough to cloud his mind with negative human emotions that, after his awakening, exacerbate the worsening relationship between Dvalin and Mondstadt, and leave Dvalin vulnerable to the Abyss Mage's influence.
Perhaps Durin's power drives people to madness, but that's merely crude conjecture.
Just as we open with this dialogue, so too do we end with it. Merely crude conjecture may well be an apt description of the topic of Durin's power. Certainly, we spare no conjecture throughout our story here. However, I feel we at least began the process of weaving together the scattered threads of Durin's tragic tale. Of a dragon born of man, perhaps to rival in greatness and purity Celestia's Dvalin, that fell victim to the fallible nature of its creator. But, despite this cruel fate, Durin left the world with a gift. The purified life force extracted from the Festering Desire that resonates with Albedo's own is proof of the dragon's true nature. Albedo and Durin, both born of the art of chemia. Through their veins runs the very essence of life, to a degree much different than others. Despite the corruptions apparent in Durin, the basis of this power remains intact. With his dying thoughts, Durin bestowed upon Vindagnyr that very essence of life. Now then, this great blessing that pulses through my veins, and lovely sight of the dark universe that gave me birth, they are now yours to inherit. For a land cast into oblivion by the gods, it was the greatest gift of all. And so we refine our understanding of the relationship between Durin and Dragonspine, not as the inhospitable grave of a despicable dragon, but as a land of new beginnings. And it all started one day when a poisoned Ouroboros fell upon the pristine chalk that is the snow-covered mountain of Vindagnyr, and pushed into motion from its icy standstill the cycles attributed to that alchemical symbol of a dragon eating its own tail. From death, life. From destruction, creation.